Welcome, everyone. It is great to have you today. I am honored to be chatting today to Lauren E. Miller, author, consultant, stress relief expert, and wellness coach, who really does emanate what being centered and present is all about. Now, Lauren has overcome some hardships and really learned how to minimize stress within her own life when she was faced with some tough challenges. Now, Lauren, can you tell us briefly about your own personal health journey?
Sure. I was back in 2006. I received a phone call that began with, "Are you sitting down?" Never a good opening line.
Right.
So I was at the time and ended up learning that I was dying. Basically, I was diagnosed with advanced cancer 1 week prior to my final divorce court date. My children were 8, 10, and 12 at the time. And in less than a 2-year period of time, I went through the experience of a divorce, a double mastectomy, 16 rounds of chemo, additional year of chemo, experimental chemo, um, 6 weeks of daily radiation. And due to third-degree burns on my chest from my clavicle down to my midriff, they had to graft my back onto my front with 14 surgeries. So my big joke these days is I don't know if I'm coming or going most days. Should I go? Should I come? So it's
Sure.
been quite the experience. And right before, a couple of years before, I had just won a medal in the Colorado State Championship for Taekwondo, World Taekwondo. So I wasn't in a place where I didn't drink, didn't smoke, was training for hours a day, in the area of Taekwondo. And so I definitely came as a shocker to me. I didn't even have the genes. So it turns out that the studies that reveal that the link between stress and disease is very powerful. And I had been studying stress management for over a decade at the time, and here I was faced with 2 great Earth School classes to see what
Right.
techniques work and what techniques don't work.
Absolutely. That's a huge amount of stress for anyone to go through. So amazing work for you to come through all of that. It's very inspiring. Can you, so this whole event, is around how people can minimize, reduce, and get a better relationship with stress to avoid burnout and extreme conditions that can come
Sure.
from that. And we know that stress is an underlying factor for all that. So can you define what you believe stress to be?
Absolutely. So the definition that I came up with after going through what I went through is that stress is the power you give, or I give, to an outside circumstance to define your worth, your value, and what you believe you're capable of handling successfully. That's a big one. When you give more authority or strength to what's happening outside of you versus your ability to handle it successfully, then what's referred to as the HPA axis, the stress response within the body, happens in less than 125 thousandths of a second. Goes from dormant to live as soon as you see that something's bigger than your ability to handle it. And that's when stress kicks in and the
So it
body
seems
responds.
Right, right. So it seems to be this perception, not really like a thing on the outside. It's our perception. So something that's stressful for someone is quite different to that idea of stress for someone else. And so that leads me then, what are the different types of stress that we may encounter? Are there different types of stress?
Stress definitely is very subjective. It depends upon your sense of awareness of what you believe you can handle successfully, as well as there's different types of stress in terms of there's the motivating stress, right? That it's that get up and go. Energy is your capacity for action. And to be renewable in life, the definition of renewable means you can expend energy without depleting the source. So oftentimes we get hijacked by the shiny objects and opinions of other people. We spill out of ourselves. And as a result of that, the stress spills over from that motivating factor, like, sweet, I got this great, presentation to give. And one of my strengths is teaching and education. So I'm excited about it. As soon as I see that as threatening, or perhaps there are different personalities and human beings that are gifted in other areas, public speaking is actually one of the number one uh, fears of
Right.
people, is actually speaking. So for other people, that would trigger their stress response, sometimes so much so that it spills over to that reactive level that becomes detrimental to the body.
Right.
And And that's when the frontal cortex restricts, shoots the blood to the back part of the brain, to the limbs, so that you can fight, flight, or freeze. That's the part where you're stuck. They refer to it as the panic zone, or the deer in the headlights. And so to get yourself out of that, there are many different tools to do so. But yes, to answer your question, there are lots of different expressions of stress, and it really is subjective to your own perceptions of your own ability to be able to handle things successfully or not.
Right. And so then in your experience, how does that then lead to this idea of burnout? Why are we getting so tired and exhausted from stress? Like, is it the physical of what you're saying, this overstimulation of our, our brain and our bodily functions, or is it mental? What's the burnout aspect here that it leads to?
So the answer is yes to all of that.
Right.
Listening to all different aspects. Absolutely, all of that, as you said. Again, it has to do with the perceptions of the situation and the individual when they're going through it. It's also an opportunity to identify and adjust your perceptions, because as my friend and colleague Wayne Dyer, who's no longer wearing the earth suit right now, he's transitioned, he had a quote that I just loved, that when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And so again, it's getting back to that ability to be the boss of your mind, because that's where it starts, versus allowing your mind to be the boss of you. I'll often say and encourage people to stay awake at the gate of their thoughts, because that's where it all happens. Be very careful what you think, because your body's listening. I was going through divorce at that time, and diagnosed with advanced cancer. Like, what? I mean, that's crazy. I didn't even have the gene, and I took care of myself. So on paper, it looked really good, except for the stress factor, and giving power to my circumstances. And also belief systems play a huge role in that. I had a lot of negative beliefs about myself as a result of not being able to keep my marriage together. Right. So that was an incredible opportunity to identify and adjust my sense of worth and value, even though that didn't work out. So it's having that compassionate conversation and flipping your script, because you're the director.
I love that, being the boss of your mind, what you just mentioned. And in your situation, that is a massive amount of stress for someone to have to go through. So someone's like listening now and watching and going, gosh, I've got a lot of stress going on in my life as well. What's the first thing to kind of do to regain control of your mind, to be able to cope with the current situation that any one person may be going through?
Sure. So one of the best, or I shouldn't say best because that's a judgment, but a helpful response to stress would be to quarantine, which is a very popular word these days with COVID. Right. But within your mind, to quarantine, so it doesn't run rampant, so you don't give free rent to the tenants that are trashing your interior castle, your world, your mind. You have the ability as the landlord of your mind to evict those simply by first and foremost, identifying what's going on. What's that really about? What are you afraid of? Because stress walks hand in hand with fear. Fear has to do with the thought that you won't be safe. You can't handle it, or you might die. In my case, it was a real death. In many cases, it's a death to ego. Not being seen, not being acknowledged, not being understood, recognized. Those are all aspects that up the stress factor. So getting very, very clear and putting them into containers. What's this really about? Asking yourself that coaching question. What's really going on here? What am I afraid of? So you want to quarantine the thought so it doesn't have free reign and take up all the landscape between your two ears, and you just plop down or put up a campsite, grab some popcorn and keep looking at it.
Right. I love these comparisons and analogies you're using. This is quite fascinating, because I never really thought of it like that, going, my gosh, it's tenants, I'm renting out the space in my head, literally, to find gazillion different thoughts, and goodness knows what they're all going on about, because there is this thing of people go, oh, I've got all these different thoughts in my head all the time. It's this overrun kind of part of our bodies, right? But it's responsible for everything else. So once and do you think as well, just on that, people are somewhat addicted to the stress? Well, addicted to the thoughts. I also love what Wayne Dyer said with that as well, but are we addicted to these thoughts? Where does that all start from? Is this stuff like from way back when we were kids? Is this stuff that we're picking up from society's ideas around the busyness thing? Like, what is this whole overthinking thing about?
Absolutely. So one of the coaching programs I offer is called Sherpa Executive Coaching. It's in the field of human resources development. And there's a very powerful process called discovering your why it matters. It's not the same as the other book that came out after that, but it has a lot of the same kind of theory behind it. But it basically, you discover your north, south, east, and west. What were you exposed to? What's the evidence that comes from your childhood? Specific theme, motivator, driver that you've seen throughout your whole life. So it's the conclusions you make about yourself in relationship to what you were exposed to, and the evidence that comes from knowing your strengths and weaknesses as a result of what you were exposed to, and then being able to understand. It's a compass, so it's north, south, east, and west. Understanding your brands, like when I walk into a room, this is what people would say about me, as well as what excites you. So it's understanding a common thread through all of that that brings you up to today, that the same triggers that triggered you when you were little, they just go from dormant to live. So there is, to answer your question, absolutely. It's been with you a long time. And again, clarity of focus leads to accuracy of response. So
Right.
your goal, I look at myself as a detective to find those pieces of you that get lost along the way,
Yeah.
that once found, create that fuller model of reality so that you can be the driver and the
Yes.
boss of your mind. And therefore, the ramification of that is that sense of peace and confidence. Now I can handle this. I've done it before. I can do it again.
Yeah, absolutely. And so with that as well, then, that's idea of self-worth, you mentioned that before as well, I suppose, in our perception of ourselves. How vital is that in getting control of stress and learning how to mitigate stress throughout our lives?
It's huge. Specifically, it's how you see yourself. And again, stress can be, or stress is fueled by a fear that I'm not okay, I can't handle it, and I might die. I might have to die to ego. The drug of approval is massive. I wrote a chapter on that in my book, 99 Things You Want to Know Before Stressing Out. It's all the work you do outside the ring that makes you successful in the ring. But two of those areas are the drug of approval and the disease to please. And it has to do with attachments. And an attachment is an emotional state of clinging due to the belief that without some specific outcome, you can't feel safe or happy. So again, I'll use the word being hijacked. You've given more authority to something, some position, something that someone said or didn't say, to define your worth and your value and capability. Therefore, you're anxious because you ask those questions. Am I enough? Am I worth it? Can I do this? All those questions, all of which in the 2-year period of time, and actually it was 5 years of the treatment, had an incredible opportunity to really practice that. One time in particular, I remember after the double mastectomy, I'd lost my hair and my eyebrows and my breasts. And my mom's very wise. She's like the Yoda of the family. And she said, hey, I said, I'm not ready to see myself in the mirror. And she said, well, why don't you cover all the mirrors in your house, just for 3 days, just to get up your inner game, as you say, And so I did. And I spent a lot of time in prayer, asking God to help me to remember who I am, what I'm not. So to get that clarity of focus, so that when I saw the image in the mirror, I could remember that doesn't define who I am or what I'm capable of doing. Or handling successfully. So I did. And at the end of those 3 days, I remember, my children still remember that. They were 8, 10, and 12. And I explained to them, sometimes we need we need to give ourselves a break. And
That's phenomenal. My gosh.
then I took the sheets down and I was startled. I couldn't tell if I was male or female. I mean, there was nothing of remembrance. I grew up in Long Island with big hair. I was never bald ever. I was born with a full head of hair. So it was a shock or experience to see the combination with a blank chest. and no eyebrows, no eyelashes. Like my youngest daughter said, "Mommy, you look like the lady from Star Wars."
Ah.
um, you know, so it gives you that opportunity to remember what
Mm,
you are, what you're not.
yeah.
Remember, you are the landlord of what you give power to. My son said something pretty cool one time too. I was weeping because I had just given my hair away. Because again, a great coaching question to ask yourself when you do feel overwhelmed by something outside of you is, what do I want to do about this to add value so that I feel like I'm in charge? It's that loss of control that can be very scary.
Mm.
And so I decided to give my hair away. I had long hair. And I did. And once I did, and I came back and I was losing my hair because of the chemo, I went up to my room, closed the door. My mom was making dinner downstairs, and my 10-year-old son snuck up behind me and saw me crying. I was on my knees praying before God, just asking for strength and
Wow.
help. And he put his hands on my head and said, "Mommy, don't cry. Your soul still has hair." And so the
Oh,
fact that he would say that statement was a reminder. Sometimes God borrows the mouths of other people to remind us of things that in the moment we're forgetting, that our
oh my
soul always
gosh.
knows. I'm okay, with or without hair.
Yeah, that's powerful. That's massively powerful. And you've touched on something as well, even deeper, which I didn't know that we might get to in a stressed conversation, but this idea of contribution and giving something to regain your sense of worth and control. So this idea of, and I believe this too, is if you can give something as well to help others, it shifts the focus off. Sometimes we're so caught up, like you said, in that busy thought process. We've got to shift our perception, but our idea of what we're doing in life as well. So, this idea of giving something away helps us to maybe mitigate stress a little as well, do you think? And giving to
Absolutely.
others, like this
Mhm.
is a whole other big thing of giving and so forth. I think that it seems that that might be a shift of regaining our power as well.
Great observation. Great
Yeah.
observation on your part, because I believe our greatest joy is in the measure through which we serve. In fact, I have a little sticky note that I keep up in the kitchen. What is your give back project today?
Yeah.
Because the less you think of yourself, the happier you become.
Right.
Oftentimes I'll hear the Holy Spirit say, "Hey, it's not about you. Stop thinking about yourself, and happiness returns." It
Mm.
really, even when it is difficult, and I remember thinking about that when I was going through cancer. What can I do today to give back to somebody else? Because when I stopped thinking of myself, then I was able to take that deep breath and realize, hey, as my mom says, we're all kicking and screaming our way through life.
Sure.
You know, in certain
Absolutely.
ways. Everybody's got their own challenge or storm they're moving through in different ways. And it's a matter of, what can I give back to lighten the
Mm.
load of another human being?
Mm.
And that, what you sow, you reap. What you
Absolutely.
you sow those seeds of kindness and generosity and
Mm.
empathy and compassion, generous assumptions, and you experience that within. It's very, very true. Very true.
So on that as well, like people are caught up doing their thing and they're whatever so-called busy life and so forth as we have different responsibilities and things to do. What do you think though will either add or decrease that pressure? Again, is this back to self-perception? How do we reduce that stress, so to speak, the daily stress that comes up? You went through something absolutely, huge in your life, but let's say the everyday stresses that still do get to people, how can we mitigate that and take some pressure off ourselves?
Again, asking yourself that well-posed coaching question: what's going on? What's this really about? Because
Right.
many times, because of our filters are our knowledge, experience, and values that literally influence how we listen, think, and communicate. And for us to be centered and objective and off the stage of the drama, because
Yeah.
when you feel the stress response, you've casted yourself smack in the middle of a drama. Most of the time, it's not your circus, not your monkey. So, two coaching questions you can ask yourself in the midst of being spun: what is real and what's imagined, and what's mine and what's someone else's? So again, that clarity of focus leads to accuracy of response, so that you can quarantine the frenzy between the two ears. so that you can get off that stage of panic and realize, is this even mine? Am I
Yeah.
casting myself in somebody else's drama? Am I mind reading? Do I
Yeah.
know for sure what's real and what's imagined? Am I just making an assumption because someone didn't respond to my phone call and email that they don't like me or they don't want to include me? Or did they tell me, hey, I don't like you. I don't want to include you. So go for the facts. We see this a
Right.
lot. My undergrad was in journalism and psychology, and the undergrad, the journalism I was trained in, I think has been long gone for quite some time. But again, it's presenting the facts in an objective and centered way so as to empower
Mhm.
people to make their own decisions. But you can do that for yourself. Present the facts. What's
Yeah.
really going on here? What's this about? And then ask yourself that question, because I often refer to it as Animal Planet. You can be tossed in the dungeon, and that's the primal part of the brain that you only have three choices: fight, flight, or
Yep.
freeze.
Right.
And in order to take that 7-inch, 9-inch journey upstairs from the basement to the frontal cortex,
Yeah.
that's where things happen. That's your place of being a mover and a shaker in life. Ask yourself a question, because for the mind to field or source the answer, you've got to get out of the basement. Even asking yourself, what do I want to do about this?
Yeah.
Allows you to open the door of the basement and come up to the front and start tuning into possibilities, because there's no problems. There's just simply situations that require your lights on attention for
Mm.
solution
That's
in life.
fantastic. I'd love to step back for a second, though. Something as well that came up in that is the idea of people pleasing as well. So, look, I know I've been that kind of down that path before as well, and trying to make everyone happy. And where does that start from? Why do we allow that in? Because that's a massive source of stress. Like you said, getting caught up in, is this your own thing or someone else's thing, that and the drama that you're getting caught up in right now?
Sure, and really it comes from that desire to be, and it's an innate desire. We see it in little children. I remember studying. I did another postgrad in childhood development and psychology, and in development, um, from 0 to 7 years old, it's that feedback and being sponges of, do you see me? Look at me, look at me. Do I matter? Do you see me, and do I matter? And even with adults, same thing. Do you see me? Do I matter? It comes from that core need to be seen, acknowledged, and recognized. That spills over. There's nothing wrong with that until it spills over to the drug of approval, meaning I need you to see me, acknowledge me, to know that I matter. So it's that invitation, which I took that Earth school of losing the physical appearance for a while, to remember I'm not my hair, I'm not my breasts. If I'm having a bad hair day, at least I have hair. So it's that perspective. And for you, it's something different, listeners. What is it for you that you give power to that causes you to spill over from that basic need to be seen, acknowledged, and recognized? Give yourself that gift first and foremost. I see you, I matter, I have value. As you up your inner game of knowing the value and the uniqueness you bring to the table, then you can take that deep breath and you can allow other people to have their value without jealousy or envy or comparison, which are all linked to the drug of approval. I need you to value me so that I feel good about myself. So really, it's the invitation. If that's the case, if you're feeling that today, you step off the stage of the drama. What do I want to remember about myself? To remember the unique value I bring. Then I can honor the value that you bring to the table, and I don't have to rise and fall depending upon how you judge me.
Right.
And that's that disease to please. There's nothing wrong with pleasing.
Yep.
Our greatest joy comes in serving. It's only when it becomes an addiction to my sense of worth and value. That means I need to do certain behavior to get a behavior from you that validates me, that I'm okay. So people get addicted to it's, and I have a podcast, and I did a podcast on motives, because it's all in the motives. Like, what are your motives on doing what you do? And it's really, we're self-oriented human beings, so there's always that component to it.
Yeah.
We're created that way. Nothing wrong with that. It's just a matter of being aware of what's going on with your drug of approval and disease to please, and resisting the urge to link your sense of worth and value based on what other people do, say, don't do, don't say.
Absolutely. And that's a huge thing right now in the world because of social media technology, our connections are so close with everyone, but this idea, and you know, this is even something that adolescents are dealing with. Some of my clients are saying, you know, the teenagers now are, it's difficult because you're looking for that external approval. So with that, how can we then maintain a healthy self-image, I suppose, to minimize stress within ourselves? What's a couple of examples there that we can do just each day to be mindful of for a healthy self-image? And then give us a couple of your best tips as well on how we can reduce stress in our life generally, just a couple of tips there. So healthy self-image and stress reduction from the expert of you, Lauren.
Sure. So again, healthy is an inside job. Self-image is an inside job. It's not anyone's responsibility to make you happy or to cause you to feel good about you. Once you realize that, it's an accountability experience. That's something you're always in charge of. Your closest friend or worst enemy is your attitude, and depending upon your choice of whether or not you feel you're capable or not, that makes all the difference in the outcomes you experience. So that sense of self-worth is an inside job. That's a journey. You're climbing that summit to remember your worth and value from the inside, but understanding that you're not going to get it out here. All these shiny objects. That's an inside job. You start this life with God, you end this life with God. In between, we follow the shiny objects, we get hijacked. We can experience rising and falling depending upon how the world judges us. And when you face your death, which I did, and had two flatlining experiences and actually left my body and came back in, that reminds you of what you are and what you're not. That it is about that love relationship between you and God. And you move forward from that place of relationship, not religion, relationship. To know that you're loved, to know that you're adored, to know you have value. Once you really lean inside, dear God, remind me of my worth and value. What does that look like for me? Because I forgot. I knew it as a child. I was able to see angels. I was able to see things that I can't see anymore. So remind my mind of what my soul always knows. So that self-worth piece is that inside job, that connection from God out. In terms of specific tools to help your body calm down so that your spirit can shine. One of my favorite tools is the thymus thump. Again, I wrote a couple books on stress management. One of them is called 5 Minutes to Stress Relief, and that has a ton of these tools. I think it's in that one, but the other one is 99 Things You Want to Know Before Stressing Out. Okay. The thymus thump, I think, is in 5 Minutes to Stress Relief. So you tap on your thymus. This I refer to as a circuit breaker. When you're stressed, the circuit breaker gets shot, right? Too much shooting through. Yep. So I'm not safe, lights go out. To turn the lights back on, it's just at the U-shaped dip, a couple inches down, you just tap on this point. Okay. And simply say 3 statements. I have faith and confidence in my future. Breathe in, my future is secure, I am secure. I have faith and confidence in my future. My future is secure, I am secure. Or when I was going through advanced cancer, I would say, I have faith and confidence in God. My future is secure. I'm not alone. I'm not alone on this journey. I am secure. God is with me. All things are possible. Even though they told me I only have 5 years left to live at 38, wow. I give my body permission to heal anyway. So you're calming your body to declare with your mouth, believe in your heart, declare with your mouth your desired state of being. So you're reminding your mind. Calming your mind in that state. The thymus actually links directly to the amygdala. Right. Your amygdala is the center for emotions. That's where you will be lights on or lights off, depending upon if you think something is threatening or not. You give more authority to the strength of God within you or to the circumstance outside of you. So that's that circuit breaker that helps you remember. And of fantastic. Course, Another one is the tapping, the EFT, which is gaining more momentum. I trained with Gary Craig, who really introduced it quite a long time ago, I think about 15 years ago, and was trained. And he actually helped me work through the advanced cancer and the divorce. And he was curious to see if the tapping actually would make a difference with 2 of life's top stressors at the same time. It does. I have found, though, which is why I also teach EMDR, another methodology, and NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. Because some people are visual learners, some people kinesthetic, some auditory.
Right.
Depending on if you're not kinesthetic at all, maybe the tapping might not land for you. Again, you're not in a box, you're unique. There's no one like you. This may help many people out there, though. The tapping is tapping on points, again, that are linked to calming the amygdala of the brain.
Mm-hmm.
So your perceived memory or distressful thought or memory is collapsed by the emotions that are attached to it. Therefore, you don't have the negative emotions that come from that distressing memory. Right. So in that middle state, that the body's calmed down, then you still can remember it, but you just don't have the PTSD associated with it. On my website, there's actually two tutorials, a 10-minute and a 20-minute tutorial on EFT. Yep. I also work with kids as well. That you can find that information as well, laurenemiller.com. So you can learn that just for the interest in time of teaching it. I have a 10-minute and a 20-minute tutorial. So for listeners, you can go and plug in whatever it is that's spinning you today.
Yeah, that's super helpful. So just to sum up a couple of quick points, we've really got to look inside. So if you're stressed right now, if you have a lot of things that trigger you day to day, it's about taking accountability and saying, what's this really about? And coaching yourself and asking yourself that really important question. And then it's as well the relationship that we have with ourselves, but also our external world, going, okay, am I allowing people to make me feel a certain way or influence my life? And then using these amazing little techniques and tricks like the tapping and things. So that's fantastic, Lauren. This has been such an insightful interview, and I think a really nice deep dive into a little more understanding on this word of stress, you know, and our perception of it as well. And everyone, I would really love for you guys to connect with Lauren as well. Go to laurenemiller.com. She's got some really amazing information on there, and free gift as well. And those tutorials sound incredibly helpful as well to help relieve stress in 5 to 10 minutes. Lauren, was there anything else you would love to add to our listeners today?
No, I think you've summed it up beautifully.
Oh, great.
The only thing that I would add is when you go to my website, laurenemiller.com, click on the tabs for programs, and then go down to stress management, because there's a couple different options for programs. Go to the programs, click on stress management. That will take you to the page that has the tutorials on it.
Fantastic.
Just for being a little more specific.
Great. Yeah, no, that's super helpful. Thank you again. I'd love to interview you again really soon. Thank you for joining us. I hope you've enjoyed this one, everyone. So much amazing information in here for you to apply as well. And we'll see you really soon. Thanks, Lauren.
Thank you.